You ever try to do something nice for your neighborhood, just a simple gesture to bring folks together and somehow, you end up being painted like the villain? Yeah, that was me. And to this day, I still can't decide if I was naive, too trusting, or just picked the wrong neighbor to believe in. So I live in a quiet little suburb outside of Denver, nothing fancy, just rows of cookie-cutter homes, trimmed lawns, and the occasional backyard barbecue smoke drifting through the air in summer. It's the kind of place where people wave even if they don't know your name and argue about recycling bins more than politics. I moved here for the peace low-key life, low drama. That didn't last long. A year or so after I settled in, I met this guy Tom. Retired, widowed, real warm vibe. The kind of guy who offers to bring your trash cans in when you forget and always has a joke about how much worse his knees are than yours. We hit it off quick. He lived 3 houses down, and over time, he became something like the unofficial grandpa of our block. One day over coffee on his porch, he tells me the HOA's been turning into a nightmare, fines for leaving Halloween decorations up 2 days too long, threats for using unapproved mulch, that kind of thing. He was visibly stressed about it, even joked that the HOA president, Cheryl, was the dictator in pastel. I'd had a few run-ins with Cheryl myself. She had this uncanny ability to make every friendly conversation feel like a veiled threat. You'd wave, she'd smile, and you just knew she was noting how many weeds were growing in your flower bed. Anyway, Tom had this idea: what if we held a neighborhood yard sale? No HOA forms, no red tape, just something casual to bring folks out of their houses and reconnect. I thought it sounded great. We spread the word: flyers, group text, even a Facebook post or two. People were genuinely excited. For the first time in a while, it felt like the neighborhood wanted to be a community again. Then Cheryl caught wind of it. I get this knock at my door the day before the sale. She's standing there with a clipboard, her signature pastel sweater tied perfectly around her shoulders, looking like a Stepford wife straight outta 1993. "Hi," she says with that fake sweetness. "I noticed some chatter about an unauthorized gathering tomorrow." I told her it was just a few neighbors trying to sell old stuff and connect, nothing formal, no music, no food trucks. Her expression didn't even flicker. Unfortunately, per Section 4A of the HOA event guidelines, any multi-home activity must be approved in writing 10 business days in advance. I tried to reason with her. "Cheryl, this isn't a concert, it's people selling lamps and baby clothes. It's not that deep." She didn't budge. Failure to comply may result in fines or further action. And then just before she walked off, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You seem like someone who enjoys peace and quiet." I'd hate for that to change. That's when I knew I had a problem. The next morning, we held the sale anyway. People showed up. Tables lined the sidewalks. Kids were selling lemonade. It was the first time I'd seen old Mrs. Willard across the street smile in months. And for a few hours, it was perfect. Until a patrol car showed up. Not one. 2. Apparently, someone had called in a complaint about unauthorized commercial activity blocking public sidewalks. Guess who? The officers were polite, almost apologetic, but they had to ask us to pack it up. Cheryl stood at the end of her driveway, arms crossed, sipping coffee with the smug satisfaction of someone who just won a war over nothing. Tom was crushed. He packed his unsold books back into boxes like they were tombstones, quietly muttering, "She never wanted this to be about community." That night, something flipped in me. I started digging. Turns out Cheryl had been president of the HOA for 6 years uncontested. Nobody ran against her. Why? Because she'd made it damn near impossible. Changed the election notice system. Moved meetings to weird hours. Claimed no one was qualified to lead. She had the bylaws memorized and twisted them like a lawyer on a sugar high. But here's where it got really shady. I found out she had a landscaping company registered under her cousin's name. And guess who got 90% of the HOA's maintenance contracts? Yup. Her cousin. Overcharged for basic stuff like pruning trees and reseeding the common lawn stuff we could have hired out for half the price. I took it to the board. Or tried to. Problem was, the board was Cheryl. The rest were her friends or folks too intimidated to speak up. So I pulled it on. I went old school. Printed every receipt, contract, and HOA notice I could get my hands on. Made a little dossier and passed it around quietly. Left it in mailboxes. Slipped it under doors. The response was electric. People were mad. Turns out a lot of us had been sitting on similar stories, fines for wind chimes, letters for driveway cracks, even threats about kids drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. One neighbor, Maria, shared that Cheryl had once taken photos of her 12-year-old daughter's lemonade stand and filed a complaint for unauthorized food vending. That hit a nerve. So we fought back. We got signatures, lot of them. Forced a special meeting. Brought in a mediator. And that night, the clubhouse was packed. Standing room only. People who hadn't shown up to anything in years came just to have their say. When Cheryl tried to talk, we had receipts. When she denied conflict of interest, we had invoices. When she said she was doing what was best for the neighborhood, we had stories from a dozen families who felt bullied, shamed, or just plain ignored. She didn't step down that night, but we voted her out 2 weeks later. Tom cried. I'm not kidding. Said it was the first time he felt like the neighborhood cared again. We elected a new board, diverse, fair, transparent. And while it's not perfect, it's better. As for Cheryl, she moved 6 months later. Word is, she tried to join another HOA board in a nearby development, but folks around here talk fast. Now I sit on that new board. Volunteered, actually. Not because I wanted power, but because I learned the hard way what happens when you don't pay attention. So I gotta ask, have you ever dealt with someone like that? Someone who used rules to control instead of connect? Who made the word community feel like a threat instead of a promise? Let me know in the comments. Tell your story. Because trust me, somebody out there needs to hear that they're not crazy. They're just dealing with a Cheryl.